One more week closer to games, and we'll have those, of course, when that Dublin game is played in Ireland with Florida State and also Georgia Tech. The AP Top 25 poll is out. The Top 25 poll is out. Nope, wrong one, Garrett.
That's if they were going to be in a tournament.
Yeah, that's part of another topic in this the Smokehouse, the Smoak Stack. Well, Georgia, not a surprise, although I thought there would be a push from Ohio State. The five that you would think are in the top five in whatever particular order, it's Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, and Alabama. Now, there was a thought that maybe someone moves into five, but those are pretty much the five we've seen with most of the various polls. And so there we are. Big 12 has Utah in at 12. Also today, others in the Big 12, Oklahoma State, K-State 17-18, Arizona, Kansas at 21 and 22.
Yeah, I this is maybe the first time I've ever felt that the AP poll didn't get too stuck on let's put this name in there and put them up really high because they've been a name. They did it. Michigan, Texas. USC is in the poll. I don't necessarily think they should be in either poll based on what we know about them right now. But other than that, I don't really have a problem with anybody and where they're ranked. I don't think anybody's overrated. I don't think anybody's potentially too underrated. I think everybody's about where they should be.
That's why they play games.
Yeah.
That's why they play the games.
I think it's impossible to tell who's overrated or underrated right now. We haven't seen anything of these teams. We're going off of all the information that's available, and so I think based on everything that everybody knows at this point, and then I'm sure there's a little secret sauce for some people that have a little bit more insight on some teams than others. I don't think there's anything that's jarring or shocking necessarily at first glance. The Big 12 having just a team at 12 as their highest ranked seed, I think that's going to be part of that gauntlet to overcome in terms of just public perception, and you're going to have to be pretty close to perfect, I think, to get the benefit of the doubt, whereas there's teams in other leagues that I think have a little bit more room for error. And so, the best team ranked at number 12, would I rank anybody higher than that? Not necessarily. I think Oklahoma State getting some respect is good to see because that's not necessarily always the case. And even above Kansas State in one of those polls, which is interesting, even though it's just by one spot. KU you expected to see there. K-State you expected to see there. Oklahoma State didn't know for sure how they would be treated nationally. And Utah was the foregone conclusion they'd probably be the highest ranked, although thought K-State would maybe have something to say about that as well. So as far as the Big 12 teams, I guess, Arizona in there as well. Got to get used to including them. And they're getting some preseason love. So that's a handful of teams, and don't think you can be too upset about that. It's a good starting point for the league.
You look at teams that have the hardest schedules. Oklahoma, all of the 6 times they're going to play teams on their schedule, 6 of them are in the top 15. Florida, 5 of them in the SEC, plus their non-conference game that they have inside the top 15. So there's a lot of games. We've kind of highlighted those 2 for their schedules, and there you are with 6 top 15 opponents on their schedules, Oklahoma and Florida.
We've been hearing about Georgia, pretty regularly now, where them coming in at number 1 is almost like they're the new placeholder team that you just start there, whereas it was Alabama for the longest time. And Alabama still at number 5 is not bad post Nick Saban. After all of the changeover and just the newness, that's still very respectable. Texas at 4. Very interesting after the run that they had last year and first year in the SEC. That top 5 sexy, man. There's some interesting storylines there. Oregon being in the Big 10. So, that's going to be a hell of a race at the top. And the fact that there's this expanded playoff, I think, just makes it that much more exciting that you're going to have more teams that feel like they're in it longer than, we lost our second game, we're totally done, it's week 6, our season's toast, best we can do is go make a good bowl game. It's like, no, you can be like the 12th team in the playoff and cause some hell at the end, and that's what's very exciting about this.
One other note about Florida, guys, is that not only do they have the 6 teams inside the top 15 on their schedule, they have 8 of the top 25 teams on their schedule.
Yeah, and one of those teams on their schedule that's not in the top 25 is UCF, who could very well wind up in the top 25. One of the other teams they have is Mississippi State, who's in the SEC. And, if the SEC is really what it says it is, then even a Mississippi State team with a new coach, still probably not a slouch by slouch standards. So, they don't they'll be favored for sure in 2 games and probably in the UCF game, but the other 8 or 9 on the schedule, probably not. And that, again, if Billy Napier gets them turned around this year, it's going to be because they were ready to take on the monstrous schedule that they got.
Also, by the way, West Virginia, Iowa State, and Colorado were in that others receiving votes. Also, the G5, Boise State, SMU. No, excuse me. I can't say that. They're in the ACC. Boise State, Liberty, Memphis, UTSA, Tulane, and Appalachian State are all just on the outside receiving votes.
I mean, I'm sure there will be the occasional team that jumps up, but that seems like it's pretty much going to be your new class of Boise States, Boise State included. But, the teams as far as the G5s go, those handful of teams that you just mentioned seem like they're kind of the best set up to be in that conversation every single year at the start of the year, the top 25 or placement within it during the course of the season. So, yeah, those teams all sound about right. Those are all the best G5s that are out there now. So, yeah, any one of those could pop up and find themselves in that top 25, and that wouldn't be much of a shocker, but they're definitely still not in a position where they're getting much in terms of preseason love. They're going to have to work their way into the poll, and especially at the beginning where, you don't necessarily have people holding the slot open for them because it's so wide open and these leagues are so big now that, yeah, you're going to put Iowa there as opposed to giving Tulane the benefit of the doubt or whatever. So they had their work cut out for them right out of the gate, but, there's a lot of high hopes for SMU and that they're going to be pretty good. And I know there's some feelings that, Tulane, even losing Willie Fritz, hired a pretty good coach, and Memphis has got some high hopes. So, we'll see what kind of noise the G5s can make, but this is the start of a new era for them, and an interesting one, because as much as we talk about the uphill climb for the Big 12 or even for the ACC, the Troys, the Tulanes, those schools have the biggest hill to climb for sure.
West Virginia has that opening game against Penn State, which would put them right inside the top 25 if they happen to win. And then, of course, the games, 5 of them against Big 12 teams that are ranked, 4 of them, Kansas, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, and also Arizona. And we'll see how that's kind of like a washing machine of teams going in and out. But there's and I saw somebody in the chat, by the way, welcome. Thank you for being a part of what we do. Please hit the like button now, if you don't mind. And if you have not subscribed, we'd love for you to do that and spread the word. This is released for one reason: to start conversation, to get matchups and hype them. It's also released because this is something that traditionally has been going on forever. Ralph Russo of the Associated Press will join us with some other nuggets. He'll join us at the bottom of the hour at 3:30. All right, now, so let's say this was the final ranking. Now, this is, again, the Associated Press. There's also the ESPN coaches poll. But let's say this was the college football standings that the committee had put together. This is how the first round would go, knowing that some teams ranked higher would not be given a bye because it's about conference championships. But you would have those 4 games: Boise State, Oregon, Boise State being what would be the highest ranked group of 5, Notre Dame and Ole Miss. You'd have Michigan, Texas, which would happen to be a rematch if it worked out that way, Penn State, and Alabama. And you wonder, when they were to go into these committee meetings before the last week, would they want to avoid Michigan, Texas, because of the fact they played earlier? That would have been 12, 13 weeks ago because they play early on in the season. Then Utah, Georgia, Florida State, Ohio State would have the first round byes for winning and the highest ranked of the conference champions.
Yeah, I think this would be a heck of a playoff if it happened. I'm still going to pick Memphis as my G5 team in the playoff, although Boise State would be the second one. And if Ohio State is not in the quarterfinals to start out this playoff thing, it's an absolutely not a huge failure. If they're in the playoff, they're in the playoff. But Ryan Day has this roster set up better than he ever has. And
we have Dan Hope of 11 Warriors is going to join us. We'll discuss that with him. But, Paul, you're right. It's almost as if they have to run the table or it's a disappointment. I don't think that's fair. I don't care how good they are, how deep they are, how much talent they have, what they have. If you get in the playoffs and you finish 12-1 or whatever it is, and you lose. Of course, you don't want to be the one that loses to Michigan if you're Ohio State again. But that's almost like you have to go unbeaten to fulfill everybody's expectations and scratch their itch.
Well, it's not their fault. I mean, it's been media-generated and fan-generated all offseason. So, I mean, there's always high expectations of Ohio State to begin with, but it does seem like just all of the combined noise is setting up for a pressure cooker for Ryan Day in some cases of, very little room for any slippage. And just in terms of the playoff, I mean, they will find themselves in that order. There would be an uproar, certainly, and a lot of things would have to happen, you would think, for them to not end up in a expanded playoff, but it looks sexy. It looks great, and sure, I could get down with an Oregon-Utah Fiesta Bowl just on the surface all on its own. That would be fine. I'm sure I'd watch most of that game, or a Notre Dame-Georgia Sugar Bowl. I'd probably watch a good deal of that, but I can guarantee you I will watch the entirety of a Notre Dame-Georgia second-round playoff game in the Sugar Bowl. I will be there for the opening kickoff, and so long as the game remains entertaining there till the very end of it. And so, I think just the playoff and the uncertainty and the excitement that it could bring and the anticipation for it is what makes this year, along with all of the realignment, that much more interesting. So I'm thrilled about the expanded playoff. And look, if it sucks, then I'll be the first to eat my words in January or, whenever we get to that point where we feel like that's the case. But just looking at it on paper, I understand that, you beat Tennessee in week 6 and you didn't eliminate them now necessarily from getting to the postseason, but you did mess up their seeding potentially, and you did make it harder on them. And I think, the best are going to be standing tall at the very end no matter what, and they're going to all have the opportunity to prove that, as opposed to you didn't get into this particular game, so even though you might have been the best, you didn't get that shot. Now there's going to be no excuses. Like, if you didn't get in, I'm sorry, you were 13th in the country, you should have won more games. Like, there's not really going to be an excuse. I'm sure there'll be a fight over it, but I think that fight will pale in comparison to who should be number 4 and who is deserving if they were at number 5. So I'm excited to see this, and on paper, I think it looks amazing. I mean, Alabama hosting Penn State in a playoff game in the first round. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I cannot wait for.
They got some history between those two in postseason in the bowl games as well. It would be great, by the way, is that, again, they have a chance. That's what's great about the NFL, though. There is no what if. There is no but. It's the teams get in based on criteria, based on qualifying. You can't really do that in college football. 2 notes about the Big 12. I mentioned that Penn State-West Virginia game is a chance for the Mountaineers to give the Big 12 a nice little check mark. Oklahoma State and Colorado open up against the number 1 and number 2 ranked teams in the FCS. In South Dakota State, we had their coach Jimmy Rogers on Friday, and North Dakota State's number 2. Those are a couple of landmines that they got to be careful of early on in the season. Last week it was Texas and C.J. Baxter. Over the weekend, Texas A&M lost their alpha at running back Rueben Owens, expected to miss the season, out during a scrimmage. He is out, and, Max Olson, along with several different writers who had that story. What does that mean? Carter Carrells had this story. The backup or the depth chart has Le'Veon Moss, also Amari Daniels, and E.J. Smith, that's Emmett's son. Those combined have just over 1,500 yards over their careers. And Smith had already played 4 years at Stanford. Moss and Daniels are juniors at running back. 1,500 yards. They have a void. Those 3, someone, maybe all, will step up, but that does leave a mark.
I like the combo of Le'Veon Moss and Amari Daniels stepping up to fill that spot. What they're going to miss with Rueben Owens is this is a dude who is the top-ranked running back in the country when they signed him. He played last year as a true freshman, showed that he has some breakaway ability, some big play kind of a thing. He is of those 4 guys that they have in that roster, he's the one who is the true potential every down back. But he is the one who has the potential to be like a Quinshon Judkins or someone like that nationally that you could just turn and hand the ball to 30 times in a game. So he's out, and he's not going to be there. I think they can get by, but they're certainly going to lose the potential of having a dog.
Yeah, no, there is no Jaden Blue behind
exactly.
Rueben Owens. And Owens really last year, he had about 800 all-purpose yards. Not many rushing. He didn't really do much there, but he was supposed to be their dude for this year.
I think they'll be okay. It's just not going to be one of those things where I don't think anybody is going to be a superstar like Rueben Owens had the potential to be.
Yeah, man, that's brutal news if you're at Texas University. I think you're holding your breath this week that you lose your running back based on the last couple of weeks, right? I mean, C.J. Baxter last week for UT, and then now Rueben Owens. So, yeah, that's brutal to hear that injury news for him, and then, also for just A&M fans because, like y'all said, he was expected to be more of the blue-chip bell cow superstar running back this year and show off that 5-star talent and show more than just the glimpses that we got a year ago. And now he's probably out for the season based on all of those reports. So, that's super unfortunate. Hated to see that news come down because of the excitement level surrounding him and just the fact that he's expected to be or was expected to be a huge part of this first year for Mike Elko's offense. So, that's brutal, and that's the stuff that you hate to see during this part of the month is we're so close and you're getting guys injured and knocked out for the season as we're less than a month away. So, that really sucks, both Baxter and Owens both.
We have Ralph Russo around the corner in 10 minutes with any kind of special nuggets of this history involving the AP. Meanwhile, there was this note over the weekend that's somewhat of a local note for the Central Texas area, with UT, of course, looking at their depth chart, Jaden Blue. Darian Gullett, according to C.J. Vogel, got some reps at running back over the weekend. He was a multi-talented, multi-position star for Marlin High School. Back when he transferred his last year, but then hurt himself in a pickup basketball game. A fantastic player. He was more of a receiver at high school, catching passes rather than running with it, but that's interesting as they try to find options. They have plenty in that depth chart, but without Baxter, obviously that means everybody else moves up one spot. Let's see. Oh, on the set in front of me, can you see it at all? Garrett, I don't think you can you? Do I need? There's a tailgate game, and we got some more to get to. We'll get that in just Victory Tailgate. There's one of those tailgate games where you try to hook that little, what would you call it?
It's a ring. Like
a ring on a hook. There's one. Go to the main. By the way, there's that keg still here that has never been taken out. Then on the set, there are Dallas Cowboys, what is that?
It's tic-tac-toe.
Tic-tac-toe. And then there's also a container that is dominoes, right?
Lawn dice. But they also have lawn dominoes.
Okay, and there's it's got the reason that's on there because Victory Tailgate's one of our sponsors, and you can get your school. For example, I saw some comments from fans that are fans of other schools in the Big 12 and elsewhere around the country. So there you are with Victory Tailgate, shop apparel, tailgate games, and more. VictoryTailgate.com. We appreciate them for sending those gimmies.
Our link is in the description, so if you click on that one, it'll take you right to it and go there. So,
all right, Baylor had a scrimmage on Saturday night. I happened to be there. So was Jack McKenzie and a little bit of other media. Not a lot, really. I had a chance to ask, as they were now closing in on, what is it, from Saturday, 3 weeks from the opener for Baylor against Tarleton State. No matter who they're playing against, they still have not named a quarterback. And I think it's getting a little bit late in the game with DeQuan Finn and Sawyer Robertson. I don't know if that means that neither one of them have stood out enough or they're just waiting as the competition's that tight. Here's Dave Aranda.
Dave, when do you need to name a starting quarterback? Is there a, weekend before the first game?
I think the sooner is better. Sooner is better for what you could do when you name a guy. Then you can give him more reps. You can your team will kind of coalesce around him, and you can if there's right now there's this set of plays for this quarterback, and then there's similar, but then these set of plays for that quarterback. You can kind of narrow all that down, and so we need to get that done. We're fighting to do that.
Are you disappointed nobody is jumped out there, or is it that much of a close competition?
It's a close competition. Yeah, guys are battling, and when I say that, I mean Sawyer's battling, and I think DeQuan is battling. I think the things that Sawyer did today was the leadership and the poise in the pocket. There's times when Sawyer's back there and can there's a nervous energy about him, and today was really calm and poised and made some throws where he stepped into it and was way impressive. And then I thought DQ was able to see edge pressure and get us out of it and get us into something else. And that was good to see him do that. So everyone is making strides and battling, and so it's a positive for us. But we got to get to a resolution.
All right. So when I texted like 4 to 6 people about what they saw, there was a scrimmage. Obviously, media not invited to it. The offensive line left. Some guys did not. They were rested. They did not practice. Maybe try to help them stay healthy. Otherwise, that did kind of create some problems with pressure on the quarterbacks. The front defensive line apparently was active, maybe because they're good or because of that. But overall, kind of like it was, I don't know, I wasn't there, but that's kind of the report from 4 to 6 different people that I was able to text over the weekend after Saturday night to find out how it went.
Yeah, I guess it could be like a good news, bad news situation if you have 2 guys that can run this offense, but neither have separated themselves. And I think that's what you'd rather have is you know who the alpha dog is. And I know the cliche is if you've got 2, you've got none. If you've got 1, you've got 1. But, I think it's early on. The bigger issue, and like I think the quarterbacks will be okay if they can stay upright, because that's the biggest issue with this team. If they can stay upright, I think this team can have an offense that's much more functional than it was last year, because the offensive line was so bad last year. If they can be better this year, then the quarterbacks, whether it is DeQuan Finn or Sawyer Robertson, should be better, and the running game should be better, which means the offense will be better. But I know you got to pick one of those guys first.
Yeah, I have no idea what to make of that. I mean, I know I'm not expecting the offensive line to be very good, but just how not good is the big question. And Lord help us if it's anything like last year, because that was an absolute slog to get through, and really kind of hurt my overall enjoyment of the entire season, because each Saturday you're like, got to go watch them again and spend 4 hours watching them be incapable of scoring, blocking, doing much of the basic things that most teams are capable of doing. And that was a rough 3-9 to watch. So they've done just about everything this offseason to improve upon that. I mean, I know you still got to go play the games, and the ball doesn't always bounce your way. Sometimes it's just bad luck or whatnot. But on paper, I mean, I think we're all expecting them to be better. But you would also have, I think, hoped for at this point DeQuan Finn, given the investment made in him, to be a star that was shining and was your starting quarterback. But, yeah, I mean, that could also be just the fact that they're not letting him loose like he's going to play in a regular game. I've heard some of that. But then again, if that was also being accounted for, you think that would play into the decision, and they'd already have that, as part of the makeup of, which direction they're leaning. So the fact that they're still not deciding, and we're 2 weeks away, is longer than I expected, and I don't know if that's good or bad. We'll definitely see against Tarleton State.
I thought about that's why I asked the question, because I'd wonder, and he kind of, I think, said that they'd like to make that decision so whoever is it will have a chance to get more of their plays and run them between now and the opening game. Because week number 2, with all due respect, there's no gimmies for them with Tarleton State, but then it's Utah on the road.